Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Books and Books. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. For those of you who may be here, thank you so much. I'm sorry, David, I was expecting a turnout for you. For those of you who are watching on the internet, welcome as well. Of course, don't forget all of our Books and Books events are, most of our Books and Books events are now live streamed on the internet. You can watch from the comfort of your own laptop if you can't make it to the store. Also, very quickly, pick up a copy of our Books and Books newsletter. This will give you a rundown of all the wonderful events we have just like this every night of the week. A couple of note worth mentioning, Ishmael Bea will be here on Wednesday. We also have Isabella Allende joining us at the Chapman Center downtown at the We have tickets on sale for that as well. And please, if I could remind everybody to have no flash photography in the store because it interrupts the flow of the internet streaming.
It reflects off my head.
The Priority List is a bold, inspirational story of learning, love, and legacy that challenge us to ask, what truly matters in life? David Menasche lived for his work as a high school English teacher. His passion inspired his students, and between lessons on Shakespeare and sentence structure, he forged a unique bond with his kids. When a 6-year battle with brain cancer ultimately stole David's vision, memory, mobility, and most tragically of all, his ability to continue teaching, he was devastated by the thought that he would no longer have the chance to impact his students' lives each day. But teaching is something he just couldn't quit. Undaunted by the difficult road ahead of him, he decided to end his treatments and make life his classroom. Cancer had robbed him of his past and would certainly take his future. He wouldn't allow it to steal his present. He turned to Facebook with an audacious plan, a journey across America by bus, by train, by red-tipped cane, in hopes of seeing firsthand how his kids were faring in life. Had he made a difference? Within 48 hours of posting, former students in more than 50 cities replied with offers of support and shelter. Traveling more than 8,000 miles from Miami to New York, to America's heartland and San Francisco's Golden Gate, and visiting hundreds of his students, David's fearless journey explores the things we all want and need out of life: family, security, independence, love, adventure, and forces us to stop and consider our own priority list. David Menasche majored in journalism at Eugene Lang College from Florida International University and taught at the renowned Coral Reef Senior High School for 15 years. In 2012, he was awarded Teacher of the Year by his region. He lives in New Orleans. We are honored. We are humbled. Please welcome David Menasche.
Everybody, thank you for coming out. This is overwhelming. I mean, this is just magical. I couldn't get most of you. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, this just means the world to me. It really does. So, a lot of you have grown up since I've last seen you. For some of you, it's been, hey, Benjamin. Have mercy. Stop it, Farrell. Boy, you haven't changed at all. Okay, so since it's impossible to last seen each other, let me just catch you up on mine. As most of you know, I was diagnosed with brain cancer some time ago. The use of the left side of my body and most of my vision. At that point, I realized I couldn't drive to school, much less be effective in front of a room of 35 or 40 teenagers, especially when the teenagers are you people. So I was unable to go to Coral Reef anymore and unable to teach, but I always was for you. So I put a request on Facebook, which many of you remember, asking who had a couch for me. And within 48 hours, I had offers in 50 cities. And I set out on the road to catch up with my former students. And I'm not going to try to act like this is some act of sainthood or martyrdom. I wanted to see these cities, and I wanted to live life. I had spent so much time in hospitals just getting treatment and being bored and miserable and restless. And I was trying to look for a sense of purpose, for a sense of fulfillment, the one that you people had given me. And I didn't know where else to find it but in your hearts. So I went to it, and thank you. And thank you again for coming tonight. And first time for everything. Joke about the trip, but I've been serving as an ambassador for just the finest organization known as Voices Against Brain Cancer. Mario, this man is trying to save my life. Thank you. Founder of Voices Against Brain Cancer, which has put together a community of, where are you? My caregiver, and of course, doctors. And Mario has put me in touch with other patients. Apparently, I have the answer too. How to smile when you have cancer, how to have a good time and live a life that's worth putting up with all the treatment and yuck, for lack of a better word, all of the yuck. Can you do?
Dave is a hero.
No. I'm a teacher. Stop it. So, if you want to know what I want for my birthday, I want you to go to Mario's website, Voices Against Distribution. It would be helping me and other people far more worthy than me. Thank you. Open the book, but since you all showed up, let me take a few questions. Does anybody have a question? Yeah. Ashlyn Ender, everybody. I enjoy long walks on the beach.
We never let it short. How different is it standing in front of us here?
Well, at the moment, I'm having a muscle spasm in my left leg, so not as easy as you'd think. But luckily, I have a
You always knew how to turn around, didn't you?
pirouette.
How different is it than standing in front of a classroom?
Very different. Nobody brought their homework. Yeah, what am I supposed to do now? I've said hello. Right. Here's a better question. Will you read from the book? Sure. Okay. This is from chapter 8 of my book, The Priority List. The first student ever to walk into my class was drunk. And this is not in the book. I'll give you the backstory here. This is the first year Coral Reef is open, 1997, and it's the first class, 7:30 in the morning, and in walks my very first student of my teaching career. And as I said a moment ago, the kid is drunk. And to think, a few minutes earlier, my biggest worry was finding a marker for the whiteboard. I had just finished practicing a little speech when the kid stumbled in. How you doing? I wish I could slur the way Aaron did, but how you doing? Kind of sounded like Rocky after 5 rounds against Apollo Creed. He asked, making his way to a front row desk and plunking himself down. The boy had long, greasy hair and was wearing a black Ozzy Osbourne concert t-shirt over white, wide-leg jeans. His wallet dangled from a chain connected to a belt loop and a spiked metal bracelet on his wrist. Imagery. See, I told you. Imagery. It works, doesn't it? Yeah, how do you like me now? Okay. As he passed in front of me, the smell of alcohol almost knocked me down. I was bewildered at first. It was first period, a time in the morning when many people hadn't yet had their first cup of coffee, and I was looking at a 15-year-old who was inebriated, and it wasn't even 8 a.m. And why on earth would he sit right next to me? I would have expected he'd slink to the back of class. Nope, this kid is wasted. Happy first day of your dream job. I walked up to the kid and introduced myself. Hi, my name's Menasche, and many of my students picked up on it and called me by my last name. It always made me on him, my father. Thanks, Dad. So it's not the most fluid reading. My name is Aaron Rawcliffe, he said, glassy-eyed and grinning. Nice to meet you. Likewise, I said, you reek of alcohol. Have you been drinking? When I looked to the boy's face, I saw some aspects of myself at his age. It hadn't been that long ago that I was a nobody and a moody, defiant, reckless teenager, taking risk, breaking rules, rebelling against my parents, and every other authority figure I could find. Mr. Bass? Testimony? My history teacher, everyone. In high school. I owe you a lot more than that. Okay. Breaking rules, being defiant, a reckless teenager taking risk, and rebelling against my parents and every other authority figure I could find. I was plenty rebellious when I was 15. And I dressed the part. My jeans were always torn, and I had a shaved head. Ironic, I know. My father nagged me so much about my hair that my mom finally stepped in and asked me what it would take for me to get a normal haircut. A tattoo, I said. Remember this? Good. Just making sure. A tattoo, I said. What a tough age that was. I was a boy growing into a man's body, a very small man, but a man nonetheless. My hormones were in space. I was wild one minute and brooding the next, misunderstood and in desperate need of attention. What better way to get it than a punk hairdo and a tattoo? Or I had as much of a chance of my mom saying yes to the tattoo as I did at snagging Danielle Greenberg, the most popular girl at Nova High School. But guess what? Mom told me to get in the car, and we headed to a tattoo parlor downtown. The whole ride, she kept asking if there wasn't anything else I would prefer instead. An aquarium, maybe? She asked, knowing how much I loved fish. I thought about it for a minute, but decided a tattoo would impress my friends a lot more than a couple of fish in a big bowl. Nah, I said, but thanks anyway. We got to the tattoo parlor, and while I was wandering around looking at all the flash art on the walls, I heard a moaning behind me. I spun around and saw a big burly biker dude getting a tattoo on his neck. His chest was covered in blood and ink, and he looked like he was in agony. I turned to my mom, eyes wide. How many fish did you say I could get? Okay. I think that's enough of a reading. I mean, I did teach you people to read. Do it yourselves. And for those of you not interested in reading, I made an audiobook. I'll read it to you. Thank you. Okay, so now is the time for me to answer your questions. Thank you, Steve.
Will we have homework after this?
Yes. Buy a book, read it. It looks like this. Isn't it pretty? Yeah, Maddie?
How did you know that you wanted to write a book about this experience? How did it come to fruition?
Well, when I had my first brain surgery, I lost huge swaths of my memory, especially early childhood memories. And I was terrified of losing the memories of you, Maddie Gomez and Ashlyn Ender and Sophie Perlmutter and everybody else who showed up here today. So when I set out on the road, I was determined to take as many pictures as possible, get audio recordings of everything, and capture the day with my words. So I wrote everything down. I could stand still long enough to write a book. I pulled all those emails together. Priority list. Good question. Yes, of course.
Right before you embarked on this journey, I know that you had talked about wanting to do a film. Is that still in the works, and how can we help you support to do that?
Well, if you know any Hollywood producers, start with a phone call. Did any of you go on to become big-time Hollywood producers?
It's amazing that in such a short time you managed to produce this book, which, thank you so much. You made the front page of the Herald.
Yeah.
I can't wait
It's easy when you're short. Just squeeze it in there.
I have a question. I have two questions. I remember doing our priority list in class, and you gave us the list of words, and I'm curious, what was on the top of your priority then and now?
Okay. She's asking what was at the top of my priority list. A lot of people who are strangers to me. In fact, students hopefully remember this. I had this assignment that I called the priority list. It was a list of 26 abstract words. Words such as love, honesty, friends, fun. And I asked my SEC more times than most of the other words did. There you go. So I asked my students to put these words in order of personal importance, writing a number 1 next to whatever word meant the most to them and a 26 next to the least important. But the first step of it was to come to a definition of the word. Power is a very difficult thing, but a necessary thing. This is an age when all of you guys were going through massive change, experimenting with drugs, alcohol, falling in love for the first time. You're trying to decide what to do with the rest of your lives, what your career was going to be, where college, etc. So the priority list was my way, and it was really only at that time. As I used to say to my students, do this list again tomorrow, and it'll finally answer your question about my priorities. I would say when I was your teacher, but I'll be honest, since diagnosis, it wasn't important to me at the time, but now gravity is my main mode of transportation. So strength is crucial. Yes? Thanks for coming.
I don't know if you remember this, but we did a swap day, and you asked me why did I not choose
I what you?
a swap.
And I asked you something?
You said, why did I not choose to be a teacher for the class for the day? And you were like, that was in my path, and I am a teacher now. I didn't make it.
Congratulations.
And I would like to
That's wonderful. So I'll see you up here in 10 years.
you are the reason why I teach, and I would like to know what words of advice would you give other first year teachers?
Okay. That's a tough one. It really is. Advice for the first year teacher. Do not teach your class like it's this big immobile block. Realize that it is filled with individuals, each one reacting differently to the words you're saying. Focus on the individuals. Teach them and treat them with respect. Be respectful at all times, and if possible, be their peer, but be a peer that they can strive to be. Everybody can be better than that which they are, and it is the job of the teacher to show each of their students that no matter how much they know on day one, that they can know more, that they can be better. But don't forget that yourself. As a teacher, don't get stuck in that rut that you know everything. Humble yourself and learn from your students. Ryan?
Hello.
Thanks for coming, Ryan.
Of course, I'm right down the street.
Oh, such effort.
I'm Menasche, year 20, class of 2012.
Are you still at UM?
Yes, I'm at UM
Right on.
studying music education.
Woo!
And I was wondering, how do you think your career and your life would have been different if you had never come up with the idea of priority list?
Well, the book would have had a different title. I don't know what it would have been called. Short man stories. I like the alliteration. Yes.
My name is Adriana Alonzo. I was class of '07. I had Menasche for my AP English class.
Thank you for coming, Adriana.
Thank you
Oh, no. Thank you.
for everything you inspired me to do. Right now I'm studying psychology and behavioral analysis. And one thing I remember from your class is you just looked at us. You know, the first day we walked into that classroom and you can tell what was on our mind. And I want to know, what drove you, just not being a teacher, but just to getting to know us and reading us and knowing what was in our head before you even know anything about us.
I didn't know what was in your head. I was just willing to ask. Curiosity and caring. I cared about you and I was curious about you, so I asked. I didn't know. I'm not psychic. Far closer to psychotic. Dr. Gregg, my own savior. For those of you who've read the book, she is the one who saved me from expulsion out of FIU's College of Education. Thank you, Dr. Gregg. You all owe her.
Now I'm embarrassed to ask a question. I want to know, did you learn anything from me?
Absolutely. Yes, and I hope my students will back me up on this. I learned to stand up for my students, to defend them, to be their champion when necessary. And I learned that from you. Thank you. And thank you for everything you've done for me and in turn for them. Neither did I. Yes. Farrell? What's going on? Well, I do this every night. Nothing much.
So, I wasn't your student, but from what a lot
You were my left wing.
a lot of people don't know that you were a hockey coach. So, what did you take from the classroom and apply on the field?
Again, learning from my students. I didn't know how to skate when I started coaching you guys. Augie, remember Augie Artiles? He taught me how to skate, and Scott taught me how to shoot. I learned to play from you and going to Panther games and watching the practices. And then I just applied. But yes, it was a microcosm of everything else. You were my teachers. And thank you, Farrell.
Thank you.
I could still outshoot you. Anybody else?
Hi, Menasche. I'm Robert.
Yeah, I know.
I had you for one semester. You adopted one of my classes.
Oh, I remember this.
2012, 6 months kind of thing.
Your teacher fell ill.
Yeah, girls. Yeah, ill.
Yes, I gave up my planning period to take over your class.
Well, my question is, you've touched and inspired tens of thousands of people.
I didn't literally touch them. That's illegal. Don't touch the kids. Don't touch the money. There, Don, there's my new advice for the first-year teacher.
You've inspired many of us students, all of us individuals. You traveled around the country. You wrote a book. You've showed that an individual as a person can overcome any type of obstacles.
Thank you.
And I see that the legacy of Mr. Menasche is not over. What's your plans after this incident?
Well, that's up to Mario. What are my plans, Mario? Keep living?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to keep on living and I'm going to keep on teaching, and Mario's going to introduce me to people that I can help. It's my purpose. VoicesAgainstBrainCancer.org. Hey, Giovanna.
I was just wondering if you're thinking about writing another book.
Not yet. Right now I'm thinking about whiskey. You would too if you were up here. Yeah.
I'm Sheila. I was class of 2002. I had you my junior year honors senior. You changed my life personally. I don't remember. It's left for a time, but the way here, I was trying to remember every moment of the Menasche. Jumping on a table, explaining Miss Temptation, to reading poetry or making anything sound interesting, even if it was the most boring thing ever. So I want to
Hey.
know, out of all the
That was a backhanded compliment.
you've taught us, all of us, like tons of things, and I can't even grasp all the things. Have we ever taught
Teach me not be the right word then.
Have we ever left a lasting impression on you as well? Because you've left a lasting impression on my life forever.
Absolutely, Sheila. Absolutely. My students were the reason that I went through all that chemotherapy and radiation. I didn't miss a day of school through any of that. 6 weeks of radiation. Many of you remember that. Every day after school. And I still showed up because I loved my students deeply. It was my purpose. It was my reason. It was the sense of fulfillment, joy, and ultimately self-worth. It came from all of you guys. And when you were learning and smiling, I was too. And when you failed a test, I felt that same failure. And when you passed, again, I shared in your victories. Without trying to over-exaggerate, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have survived brain cancer. Thank you for that. In the back?
My name is Gabby. I'm a senior right now at Corey, and you could have been my teacher.
Sorry about that.
But I just wanted to know, like, is it weird for you that so many people essentially that are strangers know your personal life, like know your story?
Incredibly. I regret a lot of the things I wrote at this point. I wish I made myself look tall. Because it's true, they're strangers. I could have been statuesque. But instead, I went with honest. Yes, it is very weird. Yes? Melissa?
Yes, I'm Melissa, and I had Mr. Menasche 10 years ago.
And yet I remember your name.
And I just really want to know, of all the cities that you've traveled to, what is the most inspiring one? What's the one that you thought of and were like completely happy, like you had a great experience?
This one, home. Absolutely. Where my family is, where my friends are, my students. I live in New Orleans now, which is an amazing city. I mean, it really is phenomenal. But unfortunately, I only know 5 people in the city, and I live with 3 of them. And I've come to learn that a city is only as good as the people that you have there. There could be all of the music and culture and museums and art in the world, but if you don't have someone that you care about to share it with, it's not as enjoyable. So I'm here to have a good time, and I'm moving back here in March. Want to hang out? All right. Take me out. Yes.
I'd like to know what are your 5 favorite books?
My 5 favorite books? Wow. Well, there's different rating scales for that. Writing, meaning, influence. So let me just give you my 5 most recent favorite books. All right, just counting backwards. I would say at this moment, because I'm reading it, would be Tom Robbins. Jen? I just lied to you. I'm not actually reading it. I don't have the vision for it. Where's Jen? What is the name of the book you're reading to me?
Jitterbug Perfume.
By Tom Robbins. I'm a huge Tom Robbins fan. Jen is my caretaker and former student, and as you all know, I love to read, but because of my vision, I don't have the ability to focus on the words the way I used to. So poor Jen is now made a life of reading. Outside of that, one introduced to me by my brother, Jacques. Hey, Jacques. On the Road by Jack Kerouac, which was obviously very influential as I later took to the road myself. Wish I could write like he did, but at least I traveled. And then there's a couple of books I really wouldn't recommend for high school. Charles Bukowski. For those of you who know what I'm talking about. I'm a big Bukowski fan. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Ken Kesey. Good book. Is that 5? 4. All right, so I really got to dig for this last one. Really got to dig. Book. Definitely not this one. Could write like Hemingway wrote, or Faulkner. Well, not so much Faulkner. Hemingway, but this is just an honest memoir. My favorite authors are the ones that transport me, that have me living vicariously outside of myself, outside of my era, in a completely different world, and forget who I am and where I am. This book doesn't do that. But if you're all willing to pick up some Mark Twain, you'll get there. Huckleberry Finn.
One more question, please. Just one more. Right?
Ooh, Steve, you pick.
Go ahead.
Steve,
Go ahead.
tag.
My name's Vera, and I read about you on Facebook and was compelled to come here to hear you speak.
Thank you, Vera.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to ask you, were you ever concerned about the physical toll it would take to travel around the country?
Well, one of the perks of believing you're going to die is you become somewhat fearless. No, I mean, let's face it. We all die. I'm sorry to be the one to break that news to you. We all do. I just wanted to do it with some grace. All right. I didn't buy this pen for nothing. Thank you.